This book was generated using Speakter's AI voices. You can create human-like voiceovers in over 50 languages.
In the quaint town of Concord, Massachusetts, a modest home stood on a quiet street. Within its walls lived four sisters, the March girls, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy. The warm glow of candlelight flickered through the windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors. Outside, the bitter New England winter gnawed at the cracks in the walls, but inside, the sisters huddled close, their shared warmth a shield against the cold. Meg, the eldest at 16, perched on the edge of her chair, her fingers absently smoothing the folds of her faded dress. Her eyes, filled with dreams of a grander life, reflected the dancing flames. As a governess, she spent her days surrounded by luxuries she could only imagine possessing herself. The weight of responsibility hung heavy on her young shoulders, visible in the slight furrow of her brow. Sprawled on the rug with a book in hand lay Jo, all elbows and knees at 15. Her chestnut hair escaped its pins in wild tendrils, as untamed as her spirit. The fire in the hearth mirrored the passion that burned within her, a love for words and stories that spilled onto countless pages. Her quick eyes darted across the room, always alert, always observing, storing away details for her next tale. Beth, quiet as a mouse, sat at the piano, her presence a soothing balm to her sister's more tumultuous spirits. At 13, she was the peacekeeper, her gentle nature as soft as the lullabies she played. Her fingers ghosted over the keys, a silent melody playing in her mind, her slight frame swaying to an unheard rhythm. The youngest, Amy, sat cross-legged on the floor, her tongue poking out in concentration as she sketched. At 12, she was a bundle of contradictions, artistic yet vain, sweet yet prone to fits of jealousy. Her blue eyes often turned wistfully to the finer things in life, lamenting the shabby state of her dress and the emptiness of her pockets. The scratch of her pencil on paper was a constant backdrop to the room's quiet murmur. The absence of their father, Mr. March, hung in the air like a heavy curtain. He was miles away, serving as a chaplain in the Civil War, his letters home a lifeline to which the family clung. In his place, their mother, lovingly called Marmee, stood as their pillar of strength. As if summoned by their thoughts, Marmee entered the room, her warm presence immediately filling the space. The lines around her eyes spoke of worry and long nights, but her smile was as bright as ever. "Girls," she said, her voice a gentle caress, "it's time for bed." A chorus of groans met her words, but they were tinged with affection. As they prepared for sleep, the sisters' chatter filled the air like birdsong, a melody of sisterly love and gentle teasing. "Jo, must you leave your books everywhere?" Meg sighed, picking up a dog-eared novel from the floor. The exasperation in her voice was softened by the fond smile playing at her lips. Jo grinned unrepentantly, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Sorry, Meg. My mind was in the middle of a grand adventure. You know how it is when a story grabs hold of you. It's like being whisked away to another world. And your body was in the middle of the walkway," Amy quipped, dodging Jo's playful swat. Her giggle echoed through the room, light and carefree. Beth's soft voice cut through the impending squabble like a gentle breeze. "Shall I play a lullaby before we sleep?" The offer was met with enthusiastic nods, and soon the sweet notes of Beth's music filled the air, soothing the edges of their worries and dreams. As they lay in their beds, the moonlight casting silver patterns on the walls, each sister's mind wandered to their hopes and fears. Meg dreamed of silk dresses and grand balls, her heart yearning for a taste of the finer life she glimpsed in her work. Jo's imagination raced with plots and characters, her fingers itching to put pen to paper and bring her stories to life. Beth's thoughts were of home and family, her gentle soul finding contentment in the simple joys of their shared life. Amy's mind danced with visions of paintings and prettier noses, her artistic spirit longing for beauty in all its forms. But beneath these individual dreams lay a shared foundation of love and support. They may have been poor in pocket, but they were rich in spirit, bound together by the unbreakable ties of sisterhood. Their laughter, their tears, their triumphs and failures, all were shared, woven into the tapestry of their lives. The days that followed were a patchwork of small joys and challenges. They mended old dresses for Christmas, their fingers pricked and sore, but their hearts light with the spirit of giving. The scratch of needle through fabric was punctuated by giggles and whispered secrets, plans for surprises and dreams of the holiday to come. They faced the sharp tongue of their wealthy Aunt March, whose criticisms of their lack of social standing stung like winter wind. Girls of your station should focus on making advantageous matches, not frittering away your time on frivolous pursuits, she would say, her words as crisp as her starched collars. But her barbs only served to strengthen their resolve, to prove that true worth lay in character, not coin. Through it all, Marmie's guidance was their North Star. Be kind, she would say, her eyes twinkling with wisdom, born of joy and sorrow alike. Work hard and always, always be true to yourselves. There is no greater wealth than a loving heart and a clear conscience. And so in that little house in Concord, the March sisters faced the world together. They argued and made up, shared dreams and disappointments, and slowly, day by day, grew into the women they were meant to be. Their lives may not have been filled with riches, but they were overflowing with the wealth of love, laughter, and the unbreakable bond of family. As the days grew shorter and the nights longer, a new energy began to fill the March home. The crisp winter air carried with it the promise of Christmas, and with it, a flutter of excitement. But as the sisters gathered around the fire one evening, Marmie's face bore an expression that gave them pause. "Girls," she began, her voice heavy with an unspoken burden, "I have something to tell you about Christmas this year." Her words trailed off, leaving the sisters on edge, wondering what challenge the approaching holiday would bring to test their love and loyalty. The crisp winter air heralded the approach of Christmas. For the March sisters, it brought with it a dilemma that would test their love for their mother, Marmee. Frost etched delicate patterns on the window panes as the girls huddled together in their cozy living room. The fireplace crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls and filling the air with the comforting scent of burning wood. Meg, the eldest, twirled a strand of her chestnut hair thoughtfully, her fingers catching the warm glow of the flames. "What if," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "we used our money to buy gifts for Marmee instead of ourselves?" Her eyes sparkled with excitement, reflecting the flickering firelight. Jo, ever the enthusiast, leaped from her seat, her long limbs flailing with excitement. The sudden movement sent a gust of air through the room, causing the flames to dance wildly for a moment. "Oh, what a splendid idea!" she exclaimed, her voice ringing with joy. "Marmee deserves the world, and this is the least we can do." Beth and Amy nodded in agreement, their faces aglow with the warmth of giving. As they planned their surprise, the house seemed to fill with a palpable sense of anticipation and love. The very air around them seemed to hum with excitement, as if the walls themselves were in on their secret. On Christmas morning, the girls awoke early, their hearts pounding with excitement. The floorboards creaked beneath their feet as they crept downstairs, arms laden with carefully wrapped packages. The scent of pine from their modest Christmas tree mingled with the crisp winter air seeping through the cracks in the windows. As Marmee entered the room, her eyes widened in surprise. The soft light of dawn illuminated her face, highlighting the lines of love and care etched there over the years. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice soft with wonder. One by one, the girls presented their gifts. Meg offered a pair of soft, warm slippers, the fabric as gentle as her touch. Jo's gift was a set of delicately embroidered handkerchiefs, each stitch a testament to her determination. Beth, with her shy smile, handed over a bottle of fragrant cologne, its scent as sweet as her gentle nature. And little Amy, not to be outdone, presented a drawing she had labored over for days, each pencil stroke filled with love and concentration. Marmee's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she embraced each of her daughters, the warmth of their bodies pressed against hers, a physical manifestation of the love that filled the room. "Oh, my darlings," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "your love is the greatest gift of all." In that moment, filled with the warmth of familial love, Marmee had an idea. Her eyes twinkled as she spoke, her voice filled with purpose. "Girls," she said, "what do you say we share our Christmas breakfast with the Hummel family? They've had such a difficult time since arriving from Germany." The sisters exchanged glances, their hearts swelling with compassion. Without hesitation, they began packing up their modest feast, chattering excitedly about bringing joy to others. The kitchen bustled with activity, the clinking of dishes and the rustle of paper creating a symphony of generosity. The Hummel home was a stark contrast to the March's cozy abode. The walls were bare, the furniture sparse. The cold seeped through the thin walls, making the air inside almost as frigid as the winter day outside. But as the March family entered with their arms full of food, the small space seemed to light up with gratitude and hope. Mrs. Hummel, her thin face etched with worry lines, burst into tears at the sight of the unexpected bounty. The Hummel children, their eyes wide with wonder, gathered around the table, barely able to contain their excitement. The room, once filled with the heaviness of poverty, now buzzed with the warmth of shared humanity. As they left the Hummels, Jo remarked, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. "You know, I think I understand now why they say it's better to give than to receive." Her sisters nodded in agreement, their hearts light despite their now empty stomachs. Upon returning home, a surprise awaited them. The aroma of roast turkey and freshly baked pies wafted through the air, enveloping them in a warm, comforting embrace. In the dining room, they found a feast fit for royalty, courtesy of their kind-hearted neighbor, Mr. James Lawrence. "Oh my," Beth gasped, her quiet voice filled with awe. The table groaned under the weight of the food, a stark contrast to their usual modest fare. "It seems our act of kindness has been repaid tenfold," Marmee said, her eyes twinkling with joy. As they savored their unexpected bounty, a knock at the door heralded the arrival of Theodore Laurie Lawrence, Mr. Lawrence's grandson. The boy stood awkwardly in the doorway, his dark curls falling over his forehead, his lean frame silhouetted against the winter light. I heard laughter," he said hesitantly, his voice barely audible over the cheerful chatter inside. "I hope I'm not intruding." Jo, her face lighting up with a welcoming smile, practically bounced over to him. Her energy was infectious, filling the room with an even brighter glow. "Not at all. Come in, come in. There's plenty to share." As Laurie joined their merry gathering, the March home seemed to grow even warmer. The lonely boy found himself enveloped in the sisters' cheerful chatter and infectious laughter. The walls seemed to expand, making room for this new addition to their family circle. In the days that followed, Laurie became a frequent visitor. He eagerly joined the Sisters Pickwick Club, a literary society they had formed, his eyes shining with excitement as he participated in their dramatic readings and lively discussions. The once quiet house now rang with the sound of youthful voices, bringing new life to its old rooms. Mr. Lawrence, observing the positive change in his grandson, began to take a keen interest in the March family. He was particularly touched by Beth's love for music, often hearing her soft melodies drifting through the open windows. The notes dancing on the winter breeze. As winter deepened, the bonds between the Marches and the Lawrences grew stronger. The once lonely house next door now echoed with the sound of youthful laughter and the warmth of newfound friendship. Mr. Lawrence, impressed by the March girls' kindness and vivacity, found himself drawn into their world, his gruff exterior softening in the face of their genuine affection. As the day drew to a close, Jo found herself drawn to the attic, her sanctuary of solitude and creativity. She climbed the creaky stairs, her mind buzzing with new story ideas inspired by the day's events. As she reached for the door handle, a sudden gust of wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Jo paused, her hand hovering over the knob. Something felt different, almost electric in the air. With a deep breath, she pushed open the door, unprepared for what awaited her on the other side. The attic creaked and groaned, its wooden beams stretching like old bones as laughter echoed through the dusty air. Sunlight streamed through a small window, casting long shadows and illuminating motes of dust that danced like fairy dust in the golden rays. This once-forgotten space had transformed into a realm of endless possibility, where the March sisters and Laurie could escape the constraints of their everyday lives. Jo, her wild hair escaping its pins, and her eyes gleaming with fervor, hunched over a rickety desk. The scratch of her quill against paper filled the air as she furiously penned her latest masterpiece. Her tongue poked out slightly in concentration, a habit she'd had since childhood. The stories flowed from her mind like a river, each word carrying the promise of adventure and romance. Meg, ever the maternal figure, busied herself with costumes. Her nimble fingers danced across fabric, stitching and mending with practiced ease. She hummed softly as she worked, transforming scraps of cloth into grand gowns and dashing suits. The gentle swish of fabric and the quiet click of her needle created a soothing rhythm that underscored their creative endeavors. In the corner, Beth sat quietly before an easel, her brush moving in gentle strokes across canvas. Though she spoke little, her paintings spoke volumes, transporting them all to far-off lands with vivid colors and intricate details. The scent of paint mingled with the musty attic air, creating an aroma that would forever remind them of these cherished moments. Even little Amy, often feeling left out due to her age, found her place in their theatrical world. Her small hands molded clay and paper into props, her artistic flair evident in every creation. The pride in her eyes when her sisters praised her work was a sight to behold, warming the hearts of all who witnessed it. Laurie, with his infectious grin and boundless energy, threw himself into every role with gusto. His voice boomed through the attic as he delivered dramatic monologues, causing the girls to dissolve into fits of giggles. The bond between them all grew stronger with each performance, their shared laughter a balm for the soul. As winter settled in, blanketing the world outside in pristine white, their attic sanctuary became even more precious. The cold winds that howled outside only served to make their cozy space feel warmer, filled with the heat of creativity and friendship. The New Year's Eve party at the Gardner's home sparkled with promise, a welcome respite from the monotony of winter days. Candles flickered, casting a warm glow over the gathering, and the air hummed with excitement and possibility. Meg, a vision in her best dress, felt her heart skip a beat as she caught sight of John Brooke, Laurie's tutor. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment the world seemed to fade away. It was as if the first buds of spring were pushing through the winter frost, a gentle romance beginning to bloom. Jo, ever the tomboy, found herself embroiled in one misadventure after another. Her attempt to curl Meg's hair for a party ended in disaster, the acrid smell of burnt locks filling the air and making their eyes water. Meg's eyes welled with tears as she surveyed the damage in the mirror, but Jo's genuine remorse and comical attempts to fix the situation soon had them both in fits of laughter. Their giggles echoed through the house, a testament to the unbreakable bond between sisters. The frozen river became a playground for Jo and Laurie, kindred spirits in mischief. Their skates carved intricate patterns on the ice as they raced across its glassy surface, their laughter ringing out in the crisp air. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, the bare trees standing sentinel as the two friends shared secrets and plotted harmless pranks, their eyes twinkling with shared mirth. Amy, the youngest, often felt like a ship lost at sea among her older sisters. She longed to be included, her heart aching each time she was deemed too young for their adventures. But in quiet moments, when Jo would ruffle her hair affectionately or Meg would patiently teach her a new skill, Amy felt the warmth of belonging wash over her like a comforting blanket. As the days grew longer and the first hints of spring began to appear, the group found themselves on the cusp of change. New feelings bubbled just beneath the surface, as delicate and unpredictable as the first crocuses pushing through the melting snow. The expectations of society began to weigh on their shoulders, a constant reminder that the carefree days of childhood were slipping away like sand through an hourglass. Their dynamics shifted, subtle at first, then more noticeably. Meg's blush deepened whenever John Brooke was near, her eyes sparkling with a new light. Jo's fierce independence bristled at the mere mention of romance, her shoulders tensing and her jaw set in determination to forge her own path. Laurie found himself caught between childhood friendships and new confusing emotions, his gaze lingering on Jo when she wasn't looking. And Amy, ever observant, watched it all unfold, her young heart trying to make sense of the complexities of growing up. As the last remnants of winter melted away, the March sisters and Laurie stood on the threshold of adulthood. Their attic productions and winter adventures had shaped them, preparing them for the grand performance that lay ahead, life itself. The air hummed with anticipation, filled with the promise of new beginnings and the bittersweet knowledge that things would never be quite the same again. As the chapter drew to a close, Meg stood before her mirror, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Her fingers trembled slightly as she smoothed down her dress, the fabric rustling softly. Tomorrow night would be her first formal ball, and the thought of being chaperoned by the fashionable Sally Gardner filled her with both anticipation and nervousness. As she gazed at her reflection, Meg couldn't help but wonder, was she truly ready to step into the world of adulthood with all its thrills and challenges? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be discovered. Meg's heart fluttered with excitement as she prepared for her first formal ball. The prospect of being chaperoned by the fashionable Sally Gardner filled her with both anticipation and nervousness. The March household buzzed with activity as Meg slipped into her borrowed dress. The shimmering confection of silk and lace whispered against her skin, transforming her from practical Meg March into a vision of elegance. She gazed at her reflection, barely recognizing the fairy tale princess staring back at her. Delicate pearls adorned her neck, cool against her flushed skin, while satin gloves caressed her arms like a lover's touch. The ballroom was a kaleidoscope of color and sound, overwhelming Meg's senses. Chandeliers dripped golden light onto the swirling dancers below, their laughter and chatter rising above the orchestra's romantic strains. The air was thick with perfume and excitement, making Meg's head spin as she took in the spectacle. As she moved through the crowd, the soft rustle of her gown accompanying each step, Meg couldn't help but notice the appreciative glances cast her way. Her natural grace, enhanced by her borrowed finery, drew admiring looks from young men and envious glances from women. Among them was Laurie, his dark eyes following her with unmistakable interest, sending a thrill of excitement down her spine. Jo, watching from the sidelines, felt an unexpected pang of jealousy at the attention her sister was receiving. The unfamiliar emotion tasted bitter on her tongue, and she quickly pushed it aside, reminding herself of the unbreakable bond they shared. Amidst the glittering throng, it was the quiet presence of John Brooke that caught Meg's attention. His gentle smile and intelligent conversation provided a welcome respite from the superficial chatter that surrounded her. In his company, the tension in Meg's shoulders eased, and she felt herself again, valued for more than just her appearance. As the night wore on, the initial magic of the ball began to fade. Meg found herself reflecting on the allure of high society, seeing beyond the sparkling facade. The forced laughter, calculated glances, and subtle jockeying for position became increasingly apparent. It was a world that both fascinated and unsettled her, leaving her with a mix of emotions as she finally bid farewell to the glittering event. Meanwhile, in the quiet of her attic room, Jo was embarking on an adventure of her own. With trembling hands, she sealed an envelope containing her first story, addressed to the Spread Eagle newspaper. The scratch of her pen on paper had been her constant companion for weeks, and now as she dropped the envelope into the mailbox, a mixture of hope and fear churned in her stomach. Would her words be good enough? Would anyone want to read them? Days passed in anxious anticipation, each creak of the mailman's footsteps on the porch sending Jo's heart racing. Finally, a letter arrived from Mr. Dashwood, the editor. Jo tore open the envelope, her eyes devouring the words. The feedback was encouraging. Her story showed promise, though it needed some revisions. It wasn't outright rejection, and that spark of hope was all Jo needed to ignite her passion. From that moment on, Jo threw herself into her writing with renewed vigor. Night after night, she hunched over her desk, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows on the wall as she wove tales of adventure and romance. Her characters came to life beneath her fingertips, their joys and sorrows becoming as real to her as her own. Amy, always attuned to the accomplishments of her sisters, felt a surge of determination. If Jo could pursue her dreams, why couldn't she? With fierce concentration, she applied herself to her drawing lessons, her small hand gripping the pencil tightly as she struggled to capture the essence of her subjects on paper. Yet as she compared her tentative sketches to the masterpieces that filled her imagination, Amy couldn't help but feel a twinge of inadequacy. Her sisters seemed to shine so brightly, Meg with her grace, Joe with her words and Beth with her music. Where did she fit in this constellation of talent? But Amy was nothing if not persistent. Each day she practiced, pushing through her frustrations and celebrating small victories. Slowly but surely, her lines grew more confident, her shading more nuanced. She might not be a prodigy, but she was improving, and that was enough to keep her going. Beth, the quietest of the March sisters, found her own path to shine. Her gentle nature and love for music had not gone unnoticed by their neighbor, Mr. Lawrence. The old gentleman, with his gruff exterior and kind heart, recognized in Beth a kindred spirit. One afternoon, as Beth was returning from an errand, she noticed something different about the March home. A beautiful piano, its polished wood gleaming in the sunlight, stood in the parlor. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she approached it, her fingers hovering reverently over the keys. The rich, warm scent of wood polish filled her nostrils, and she could almost hear the music waiting to be played. A note propped against the music stand caught her attention. In Mr. Lawrence's bold handwriting, it explained that the piano had once belonged to his beloved daughter, now long past. He hoped it would bring Beth as much joy as it had brought his child. Tears welled in Beth's eyes as the magnitude of this gift washed over her. For days she struggled with how to express her gratitude, her shyness warring with her desire to properly thank Mr. Lawrence. Finally gathering all her courage, she made her way to the imposing Lawrence mansion. As she stood before Mr. Lawrence, her voice barely above a whisper, Beth poured out her heartfelt thanks. The old gentleman's eyes softened as he listened, and in that moment a special bond formed between them. Two souls united by their love of music and the healing power of kindness. The March sisters' world seemed full of possibility and promise. Meg had tasted the allure of high society. Joe was pursuing her writing dreams. Amy was honing her artistic skills, and Beth had found a kindred spirit in Mr. Lawrence. Yet as the sun set on another day, casting long shadows across the March home, a sense of unease began to creep in. The air grew heavy with an inexplicable tension, as if the very house was holding its breath. Little did they know that their lives were about to change forever. In the growing darkness, the distant sound of hoofbeats approached, carrying with it a message that would shatter their world. The March family's world came crashing down around them. A telegram had arrived bearing devastating news. Mr. March had fallen gravely ill in Washington, D.C., and his life hung by a thread. The air in the March home grew thick with tension as Marmie's trembling hands clutched the telegram. Her face, usually a picture of calm strength, drained of color, leaving her looking pale and vulnerable. With a deep breath that seemed to steady her very soul, she sprang into action, her movements quick and purposeful as she began preparations for her journey. The girls watched their mother, a whirlwind of efficiency masking her fear, with a mixture of worry and determination etched on their young faces. Meg's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, while Amy's lower lip quivered. Beth, ever the gentle soul, quietly gathered items she thought her mother might need, her actions a silent prayer for her father's recovery. Joe, unable to contain her restless energy, paced the room like a caged tiger. Her mind raced, thoughts tumbling over each other like leaves in a storm. They needed money for the trip, and in a moment of impulsive bravery that would alter the course of her life, she made a decision. Slipping out of the house, Joe made her way through the bustling streets. The chatter of passers-by and the clatter of horse hooves on cobblestones faded into a dull roar as she focused on her destination, the wigmaker's shop. With each step, her heart pounded a fierce rhythm against her ribs, matching the determined tap of her boots on the pavement. The bell above the shop door tinkled, a jarringly cheerful sound in contrast to the weight of Joe's mission. The snip of scissors echoed in the quiet shop, each cut like a physical blow. Joe watched, a lump forming in her throat, as her prized chestnut locks fell to the floor in a cascade of brown waves. Her hair, once her crowning glory, was transformed into a means to help her father. As the last strands fell away, the physical weight lifted from her head seemed to settle on her heart, a bitter-sweet sacrifice that left her feeling both lighter and heavier all at once. With Marmie gone, the March home took on a different character. Quieter, yet charged with a new sense of responsibility, the girls threw themselves into managing the household, each taking on new roles with a mixture of determination and trepidation. Meg took charge of the kitchen, her brow furrowed in concentration as she deciphered recipes. Amy, usually more concerned with her artwork, now dutifully swept and dusted, her small hands wielding the broom with surprising vigor. But fate, it seemed, was not done testing the March family. Beth, sweet and selfless Beth, fell ill with scarlet fever after tending to the Hummel family in their time of need. The news of the Hummel baby's death from the same disease cast a pall over their already troubled home, like a dark cloud blotting out the sun. For safety's sake, the family was forced to separate. Meg was sent to stay with the Gardners, while Amy found refuge with Aunt March. The separation weighed heavily on all of them, like a physical ache in their chests. Joe, having had scarlet fever before, remained at home with Hannah, the loyal housekeeper, to care for Beth. Beth's room became a battleground against the fever. The air was thick with the scent of medicinal herbs and the acrid smell of sweat. Joe and Hannah worked tirelessly, their faces drawn with worry as they tended to the feverish girl. Beth's usual rosy cheeks were now flushed an alarming red, her breaths coming in short, labored gasps that seemed to echo in the quiet room. In moments of respite, Joe wrote to Marmee, her pen flying across the paper, pouring out her fears and begging for her mother's return. Tears splattered the page, blurring the ink in places, each drop carrying the weight of a family teetering on the brink of tragedy. As Beth's condition worsened, a heavy silence fell over the March home. It was as if the very house held its breath, waiting and hoping. The ticking of the clock seemed unnaturally loud, each second stretching into eternity as it marked the precious moments of Beth's struggle. In this dark hour, Laurie proved to be a beacon of support. He ran errands tirelessly, his youthful energy a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere. His presence brought moments of relief, like rays of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Mr. Lawrence, too, stepped forward to help, sending his personal physician, a lifeline thrown to a drowning family. As Beth's fever reached its peak, the family stood at a precipice. Joe held her sister's hand, feeling the heat radiating from Beth's skin, her own heart racing with fear and hope. In the quiet moments between Beth's labored breaths, as Joe prayed for a miracle, the true meaning of family love and resilience revealed itself. The March girls were growing up, forged in the fires of adversity, emerging stronger and more tightly bound than ever before. As the night wore on, Beth's breathing seemed to ease slightly, a faint glimmer of hope in the darkness. Suddenly, a gust of cool air swept through the room, rustling the curtains. Joe's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Was it just the wind, or was it a sign? Her heart pounding, she leaned closer to Beth, watching intently for any change. The air seemed to crackle with anticipation, as if the very house was holding its breath, waiting to see what the new day would bring. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of anticipation as it wafted through the open windows of the March house. Marmee's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed the tablecloth for the 100th time, her eyes darting to the clock on the mantel. The girls flitted about like butterflies, their excitement palpable in every movement. Joe's fingers itched to write, to capture this moment of suspended joy. But she forced herself to focus on arranging fresh-cut flowers in the parlor. The soft petals beneath her calloused fingertips reminded her of the delicate balance between strength and fragility, a balance her family had navigated during their father's absence. As the distant rumble of carriage wheels reached their ears, a collective intake of breath echoed through the house. Hearts pounding, the family rushed out onto the porch, their eyes straining down the leaf-strewn lane. The carriage emerged from the dappled shadows of overhanging trees, and there he was, Mr. March, looking thinner and more weathered than before, but with eyes that sparkled with the same warmth and love they remembered. Time seemed to stand still for a moment, then rush forward as they surged to meet him. Embraces were exchanged, the feeling of his arms around them both familiar and strange. Tears of joy mingled with laughter, creating a symphony of homecoming that filled the air. It was as if a missing piece of their world had finally slotted back into place, the family whole once more. But the euphoria of reunion was tempered by a shadow of concern as Beth stepped forward. Still weak from her battle with scarlet fever, she greeted her father with a frail smile that tugged at everyone's heartstrings. Mr. March's face clouded with worry as he gently held his daughter, her bird-like frame feeling impossibly delicate in his arms. Silently, he vowed to help nurse her back to health, his determination as strong as the oak trees that lined their property. In the days that followed, the family fell into a new rhythm, like dancers relearning steps to a half-forgotten waltz. The girls took turns reading to their father, their voices painting vivid pictures of the months he'd missed. Jo's tales of writing adventures tumbled out in a torrent of words, her eyes shining with a passion that both thrilled and worried her father. Meg spoke of her experiences managing the household, her quiet pride evident in every measured word, hinting at the woman she was becoming. Amy, newly returned from Aunt March's, shared stories of her time away, her gestures more refined, her speech more polished. Yet beneath the veneer of sophistication, her family could still see glimpses of the impulsive girl they knew and loved. Mr. March listened to it all with rapt attention, his heart swelling with pride at how his daughters had grown. He was particularly moved by Jo's sacrifice of her hair, running his hand over her shorn locks with a mixture of sadness and admiration. "My brave girl," he murmured, causing Jo to blush and duck her head, unused to such direct praise. As days turned to weeks, Beth's health slowly improved. Like a delicate flower unfurling its petals after a harsh winter, she gradually regained her strength. Her brush with death had left an indelible mark on her spirit, deepening her appreciation for life's simple joys. Often she could be found sitting by the window, her eyes closed in quiet contemplation, a serene smile playing on her lips as she listened to the birds singing in the garden. Jo, meanwhile, found herself grappling with conflicting emotions that swirled within her like leaves caught in an autumn gust. Her friendship with Lori had always been a source of comfort and joy, but lately she felt a strange tension creeping in. When Lori visited, his gaze lingered on her a moment too long, and she found herself both thrilled and terrified by the implications. She threw herself into her writing with renewed vigor, using it as a shield against the confusing feelings that threatened to overwhelm her. Meg and John Brooks' relationship blossomed under Mr. March's watchful eye. John's visits became more frequent, and the air between them crackled with unspoken affection. Mr. March observed their interactions with a mixture of approval and paternal protectiveness. One evening, as the setting sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, he pulled John aside for a heart-to-heart. "You're a good man, John," he said, his voice warm but firm. "But Meg is young yet. Give it time." John nodded, understanding the wisdom in Mr. March's words, even as his heart yearned to move faster. Amy's return from Aunt March's brought a touch of refinement to the household. She moved with a new grace, her manners impeccable, yet underneath the polished exterior, she was still the same Amy they all knew and loved. Her sisters teased her good-naturedly about her newfound airs, but secretly they were impressed by her transformation. As autumn leaves began to turn, painting the world in a riot of reds and golds, the March family settled into their new normal. Each member found their place in the changed dynamic of the household, like instruments in an orchestra finding harmony after a long intermission. The house rang with laughter, debates, and the occasional squabble, but underlying it all was a deep current of love and gratitude for being whole once again. One crisp evening, as the family gathered in the parlor, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. Meg and John exchanged glances, their cheeks flushed with more than just the warmth of the fire. As John cleared his throat, preparing to speak, a knock at the door startled them all. The unexpected interruption left everyone frozen, wondering what news could be so urgent as to disturb their peaceful evening. Little did they know, their lives were about to change forever. The March household buzzed with excitement as Meg and John Brooke announced their engagement. The news set hearts aflutter and minds racing with thoughts of the upcoming nuptials. A flurry of activity ensued as plans for a simple yet heartfelt wedding at the family home began to take shape. The air was thick with anticipation, but a dark cloud loomed on the horizon. Aunt March's disapproval hung heavy, her sharp tongue lashing out at the idea of Meg marrying a man of modest means. Her words, though, were like raindrops on a sturdy roof, sliding off the shield of love and support the March family had built around the couple. Jo found herself caught in an emotional tempest. The thought of Meg leaving their childhood home felt like a splinter in her heart, threatening to tear apart the fabric of their sisterhood. To mask her inner turmoil, she threw herself into the wedding preparations with a frenzied energy that both impressed and concerned her family. Her hands moved swiftly, arranging flowers and adjusting lace, while her mind raced with conflicting emotions. The days leading up to the wedding passed in a whirlwind of activity. The house was alive with the rustle of fabric, the sweet scent of flowers, and the constant hum of excited whispers. On the morning of the ceremony, a hush fell over the March home as Meg emerged from her room. She was a vision of spring, her simple gown lovingly crafted by her sister's hands. It seemed to glow with an inner light, as if all the love poured into its creation now radiated from Meg herself. The ceremony, officiated by Mr. March, was an intimate affair that touched the hearts of all present. As Meg and John exchanged vows, their voices trembling with emotion, even Jo felt her resistance melting away. The love between the newlyweds was palpable, filling the room with a warmth that rivaled the summer sun streaming through the windows. The air itself seemed to shimmer with joy and promise. After the wedding, Meg and John moved into a small house nearby, which they christened the Dovecote with affectionate smiles. The name seemed fitting, as the couple cooed and nestled into their new life together. But for Meg, the transition from carefree girl to mistress of her own home was not without its challenges. The tight budget that John's modest income imposed became a daily puzzle for Meg to solve. She grappled with unfamiliar recipes, her kitchen often filled with the acrid smell of burnt offerings as she learned the art of cooking. The sizzle of oil in a pan, the bubbling of a pot on the stove, and the occasional crash of a dropped utensil became the soundtrack of her days. Managing finances proved equally daunting, each penny stretched to its limit as Meg strived to create a comfortable home. Jo found herself drawn to the Dovecote like a moth to a flame, her visits a lifeline for both sisters. As she helped Meg navigate the choppy waters of married life, Jo also wrestled with her own sense of loss. The empty space in their childhood home seemed to echo with memories of shared laughter and whispered secrets. Each creak of the floorboards, each whisper of wind through the curtains, reminded her of Meg's absence. Meanwhile, life continued its relentless march forward for the rest of the March family. Laurie, now a college graduate, stepped into the world of business at his grandfather's side. But as he settled into his new role, his gaze often strayed to Jo. The boyish affection he had always felt for her began to deepen, coloring his perception of her with new shades of possibility. His heart quickened whenever she was near, his palms growing sweaty as he struggled to find the right words to express his changing feelings. Amy, her artistic passion burning brighter than ever, spent her days sketching and painting. The scratch of pencil on paper and the swish of brush on canvas filled her room, each stroke bringing her closer to her dreams of studying in Europe. Her eyes sparkled with determination as she imagined distant shores and grand museums. Beth, though still delicate in health, found a quiet contentment in the rhythms of domestic life. Her gentle presence and the soft melodies that flowed from her piano brought a sense of peace to the household, even as they adjusted to the absence of Meg's lively spirit. The gentle tinkling of piano keys became a soothing balm for the family's changing dynamics. As the days turned to weeks, the March family found themselves navigating a new landscape of relationships and responsibilities. The empty chair at the dinner table served as a constant reminder of Meg's absence, yet it also pushed each of them to step into new roles. They were like actors in a familiar play, suddenly asked to take on different parts. The family dynamics shifted and swayed, sometimes harmoniously, sometimes with discord, as they learned to dance to this new rhythm of life. As the sun set on another day, casting long shadows across the March home, Jo found herself standing at her bedroom window. Her fingers tapped restlessly against the windowsill, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The world outside seemed to call to her, promising adventure and opportunity. A fire burned in her chest, a yearning for something more. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Jo made a decision. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she would take the first step towards her dreams, no matter the cost. Jo's restlessness had reached a fever pitch. Her dreams of a writing career burned brighter than ever, consuming her thoughts day and night. The March household buzzed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension as Jo announced her bold decision to move to New York City and work as a governess for Mrs. Kirk, a family friend. The day of her departure arrived with the crisp chill of early autumn. Jo stood on the platform, her small trunk at her feet, surrounded by her concerned family. The air was thick with the acrid smell of coal smoke and the metallic tang of the railway tracks. Meg's eyes glistened with unshed tears, while Amy clung to her arm, her fingers digging into Jo's sleeve as if she could anchor her sister to Concord through sheer force of will. Beth, pale but smiling, pressed a small notebook into Jo's hands, a parting gift for her stories. The leather was soft and worn, a familiar comfort against Jo's calloused fingertips. Their mother's worried gaze spoke volumes, a mixture of pride and anxiety etched on her face, each line a testament to the bittersweet pain of watching a child spread their wings. As the train whistle pierced the air, a shrill harbinger of change, Jo caught sight of Laurie in the distance. His disappointment was palpable even from afar. His shoulders slumped and his usually bright eyes dulled with unspoken hurt. Their eyes met briefly, and Jo felt a twinge of guilt twist in her stomach like a knife. But the call of adventure thrummed in her veins, too strong to ignore. With a final wave, she boarded the train, her heart pounding a staccato rhythm against her ribs. The journey to New York was a blur of rolling landscapes and fleeting towns. Jo's mind raced faster than the train, filled with dreams of the stories she would write and the life she would build. As the cityscape began to unfold before her, a tapestry of brick and steel reaching towards the sky, Jo's breath caught in her throat. New York City assaulted her senses from the moment she stepped off the train. The cacophony of sounds, horse hooves on cobblestones, vendors hawking their wares, the constant chatter of 1,000 conversations overwhelmed her. The air was thick with the mingled scents of roasting chestnuts, horse manure, and the indefinable essence of humanity pressed close together. Mrs. Kirk's boarding house stood as a bastion of relative calm amidst the city's chaos. The quaint building teemed with life, its rooms a patchwork of stories waiting to be discovered. Mrs. Kirk herself, a jovial woman with rosy cheeks and a booming laugh, welcomed Jo with open arms. Her 2 young daughters, lively girls with curious eyes and mischievous smiles, peered out from behind their mother's skirts, already sizing up their new governess. Jo threw herself into her new role with characteristic enthusiasm, her days a whirlwind of lessons and laughter. The girls tested her patience, but their genuine curiosity and occasional flashes of insight rewarded Jo's efforts. In her free moments, she explored the city like a woman possessed, drinking in every sight and sound with the voracity of a starving artist. The museums became her sanctuaries, each painting and sculpture a spark igniting new ideas for her stories. She stood before masterpieces, her fingers itching for a pen, imagining the lives and loves of the figures captured in oil and marble. Lectures set her mind ablaze with possibilities, and she would scribble furiously in her notebook long into the night, her candle burning low as she chased elusive threads of inspiration. It was during one of these late-night writing sessions that Jo first encountered Professor Friedrich Baer. The poor German immigrant, with his shabby coat and kind eyes, intrigued Jo from the start. Their first conversation was a clash of ideas, Jo's youthful passion meeting Baer's seasoned wisdom. Yet as the weeks passed, their differences melted away like snow in spring, replaced by a deep mutual respect and a blossoming friendship. Baer became more than just a friend. He was a mentor, challenging Jo to dig deeper in her writing. "Write what you know, what you feel," he would say, his accent thick but his words clear as a bell. Jo found herself questioning her sensational tales, yearning to create something more meaningful, something that would resonate in the hearts of her readers long after they closed the book. The rejections came hard and fast, each one a blow to Jo's confidence. She would sit at her small desk, surrounded by crumpled papers like fallen soldiers, fighting back tears of frustration. But for every rejection, there was a small victory, a published story, a word of encouragement from an editor who saw promise in her work. Jo clung to these moments, using them as fuel for her determination. She wrote feverishly, pouring her heart onto the pages, her stories evolving with each draft like butterflies emerging from their chrysalises. Letters from home were Joe's lifeline, a tether to the world she had left behind. She devoured every word, picturing her family gathered around the fire, sharing their day. In return, she filled pages with her adventures, painting vivid pictures of New York life for her loved ones back in Concord. Her pen flew across the paper, trying to capture the essence of the city, its energy, its dangers, its endless possibilities. As the months flew by, Joe found herself changing in ways she hadn't anticipated. The city, with its myriad of characters and stories, had broadened her horizons like a ship setting sail on an endless ocean. She observed couples in the park, elderly pairs still holding hands after decades together, young lovers stealing kisses in the shadows of trees. These sights stirred something in Joe, making her question her earlier dismissal of romance and marriage. Was there more to love than she had allowed herself to believe? Her friendship with Professor Pear deepened, their conversations stretching long into the night like shadows at sunset. Joe found herself looking forward to these moments, her heart skipping a beat when she heard his familiar knock on her door. Was this the stirring of something more than friendship? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. As her 6-month stay in New York neared its end, Joe stood at her window, gazing out at the city that had become her temporary home. The streets below hummed with life, a stark contrast to the quiet of her childhood home. She thought of the girl who had arrived here months ago, brimming with ambition but naive to the ways of the world. That girl was gone, replaced by a woman who had tasted independence, faced her fears, and emerged stronger, like a sword tempered in fire. Joe realized, with a mixture of excitement and nostalgia, how much she had grown and changed during her time away from home. The future stretched before her, full of possibilities, and for the first time, Joe felt truly ready to embrace whatever it might bring. As she began to pack her trunk, sorting through the mementos and manuscripts she had accumulated, a letter arrived from home. Joe's hands trembled as she broke the seal, her eyes scanning the contents. Her breath caught in her throat as she read the unexpected news. Amy, Europe, Aunt March. The words blurred together as Joe's mind reeled with the implications. She sank onto her bed, the letter clutched to her chest as a storm of emotions raged within her. How could this be? What did it mean for her own dreams and plans? The New York sky darkened outside her window, mirroring the tumult in Joe's heart. As night fell, she lay awake, her mind racing with questions and possibilities. What would she find when she returned home? And how would this unexpected turn of events shape the path that lay ahead? Amy's heart soared with unexpected joy. An invitation from Aunt March had arrived, offering her the chance to embark on a grand tour of Europe. The crisp paper trembled in her hands as she read and reread the words, each syllable pulsing with the promise of adventure. She burst into the cozy living room of the March home, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "I'm going to Europe!" she exclaimed, her voice ringing with disbelief and delight. The family gathered around, their faces a mix of surprise and pride. Joe, sprawled on the worn rug with a book, felt a twinge of envy pierce her heart. She pushed it aside, forcing a smile. "That's wonderful, Amy," she said, her voice only slightly strained. "You'll see all those paintings you've dreamed about." The days flew by in a whirlwind of preparation. Amy's trunk slowly filled with carefully chosen outfits and art supplies. On the morning of her departure, she stood in the garden, breathing in the sweet scent of blooming roses one last time. The sun painted the sky in soft pinks and golds, as if bidding her a fond farewell. The carriage wheels crunched on the gravel drive. Amy hugged each family member tightly, lingering a moment longer with Beth, whose frail form seemed even more delicate in the morning light. As the carriage pulled away, Amy waved until her arm ached, watching her childhood home shrink into the distance. The world lay before her, vast and full of promise. Europe unfolded like a vivid dream. In Paris, Amy stood before the Mona Lisa, her breath catching in her throat. The enigmatic smile seemed to hold secrets just beyond her grasp. The Louvre's halls echoed with her footsteps as she wandered, drinking in centuries of artistic genius. Rome's ancient streets whispered stories with every step. Amy's fingers flew across her sketchbook, desperate to capture the play of light on weathered stone, the graceful arc of a fountain, the timeless beauty of a crumbling ruin. Her heart swelled with each new discovery, each moment of beauty. Meanwhile, in Concord, life continued its steady rhythm. Jo returned from New York, her writing dreams temporarily set aside. The familiar sights and sounds of home wrapped around her like a warm blanket, comforting yet somehow constricting. It was on a golden afternoon, the air heavy with the scent of roses, that Laurie chose to bare his heart. His words tumbled out, passionate and sincere, as he confessed his love for Jo. She listened, her face a mixture of surprise and growing dismay. "Oh, Laurie," Jo said softly, her voice catching. "I care for you deeply, but not in the way you want. We're too alike, too stubborn. We'd clash like thunderclouds." She reached out, grasping his hand. "I can't bear the thought of losing you as a friend." Laurie's face fell, the light in his eyes dimming. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving Jo standing alone in the garden, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she had hurt someone she loved. In the days that followed, Laurie made a decision. Europe called to him, offering escape and the promise of new beginnings. He set sail, his heart still aching, but determined to find his path. Fate, it seemed, had other plans. In the sun-drenched streets of Nice, Laurie's path unexpectedly crossed with Amy's. Their eyes met across a crowded cafe, surprise giving way to genuine pleasure. As they sat and talked, sharing stories of their travels, something shifted between them. Amy was no longer the little girl Laurie remembered. She had blossomed into a poised, accomplished young woman. And Laurie, in Amy's eyes, had matured from the boy next door into a man of depth and character. Their days in Nice took on a golden hue, filled with laughter and shared confidences. They explored the city together, Amy's artistic eye opening Laurie to new ways of seeing the world around them. In turn, Laurie's wit and charm brought out a side of Amy that had long been overshadowed by her more boisterous sisters. As Amy and Laurie's relationship deepened, an unseen shadow fell over the March household back in Concord. Beth, always the quietest and most fragile of the sisters, began to fade like a delicate flower wilting in the heat. Her decline was gradual at first, almost imperceptible, but soon became impossible to ignore. Jo, attuned to her sister's needs in a way that bordered on telepathy, sensed the change. She returned home to find Beth pale and weak, but smiling bravely. The sisters spent long hours together, Jo reading aloud or simply sitting in companionable silence, each moment precious and fleeting. Across the ocean, Amy remained blissfully unaware of the gathering storm at home. She continued her tour, her artistic skills flourishing under the tutelage of masters and the inspiration of Europe's grandeur. Yet as she grew and changed, so too did her perspective on life and what truly mattered. As Amy stood before a breathtaking sunset on the Italian coast, her sketchbook forgotten in her lap, she found herself thinking not of future triumphs or accolades, but of home, of Beth's gentle smile, Jo's infectious laughter, Meg's steadfast presence, and the unconditional love of her parents, and, increasingly, of Laurie, whose presence had become a source of comfort and joy she had never expected. Unbeknownst to Amy, as she contemplated her journey of self-discovery, Beth's condition worsened rapidly back home. Jo, ever vigilant, watched over her sister with a mixture of love and growing fear, her heart aching with the weight of unspoken goodbyes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Italian coastline, Amy felt a sudden, inexplicable chill run down her spine. A sense of unease settled over her, as if some invisible thread connecting her to home had suddenly pulled taut. She shook off the feeling, trying to focus on the beauty around her, but couldn't shake the nagging sensation that something was terribly wrong. Beth's condition took a sudden, alarming turn for the worse. Her frail body, once full of life, now succumbed to the relentless illness that had plagued her for months. The March household, usually bustling with activity, fell into a hushed, anxious state. The very air seemed to thicken with worry, pressing down on the family like a heavy blanket. Jo, her heart a tumult of fear and determination, devoted herself entirely to Beth's care. Day and night, she sat vigil by her sister's bedside, her voice a lifeline in the quiet room. The soft glow of the lamp cast flickering shadows on the walls, dancing like restless spirits. Joe's fingers trembled slightly as she turned the pages of Beth's favorite book, her words a soothing balm in the stillness. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer. Joe read, her voice catching on the words. She glanced at Beth's pale face, hoping to see a flicker of recognition, a hint of the vibrant girl who once filled their home with music. The March family rallied around Beth like a fortress of love. Meg arrived daily, her arms laden with fresh flowers. The sweet scent of lilacs and roses battled against the sterile smell of illness, a fragrant reminder of the world beyond Beth's sick room. Amy, though far away, sent letters filled with cheerful anecdotes and colorful sketches. Joe would prop them up on Beth's nightstand, a window to adventures her sister could no longer experience. Mr. March's prayers echoed through the house, a desperate plea carried on whispered breaths. "Lord, spare our Beth," he would murmur, his voice cracking with emotion. "Give her strength to fight this battle." As days melted into weeks, Beth's quiet acceptance of her fate became a strength that both inspired and broke the hearts of those around her. One evening, as the setting sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, Beth turned to Joe, her eyes shining with a wisdom that seemed to transcend her years. "Joe," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the gentle rustle of curtains in the breeze. "Promise me you'll live for both of us." Joe's throat tightened, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. The weight of Beth's request settled on her shoulders like a physical thing. "Beth, You have so much to give the world," Beth continued, squeezing Joe's hand with surprising strength. Her fingers were cool and dry, like autumn leaves. "Your stories, your love. Don't let my passing dim your light." In that moment, as the sisters shared a look of understanding that transcended words, Joe felt the enormity of Beth's legacy. It was both a burden and a gift, one she vowed to honor with every fiber of her being. When Beth finally slipped away, it was as peaceful as a sigh. The house fell into a hush, as if the very walls were holding their breath in reverence. The ticking of the clock on the mantel seemed unnaturally loud, marking time in a world that had suddenly, irrevocably changed. The family gathered, their grief a tangible thing, filling the spaces where Beth's laughter once rang. Marmie's quiet sobs mingled with Amy's muffled cries, while Meg stood silent, her hand pressed to her mouth as if to hold back a scream. Mr. March's face was etched with lines of sorrow, his usual strength giving way to the weight of loss. In the days that followed, Joe found solace in her writing. She poured her heart onto the pages, each word a tribute to Beth's gentle spirit. The scratch of her quill against paper became a constant companion, a rhythm that helped to fill the awful silence left in Beth's wake. The novel took shape under Joe's hand, a tapestry woven from the threads of their shared experiences, joys and sorrows. She wrote of summer picnics and winter snowball fights, of whispered secrets and shared dreams. With each word, Beth lived again, her spirit dancing across the pages. Marmie, ever the pillar of strength, encouraged Joe's endeavors. One afternoon, she found Joe hunched over her desk, ink-stained fingers gripping her quill tightly. "Your words have power, Joe," Marmie said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She placed a gentle hand on Joe's shoulder, her touch a balm to Joe's raw emotions. "Use them to keep Beth's memory alive." Meanwhile, across the ocean, Lori and Amy clung to each other as they received the news of Beth's passing. Their shared grief became a crucible, forging their bond into something deeper, more profound. They found comfort in long walks along the Seine, their conversations a mix of fond memories and tentative hopes for the future. It was during one such walk, as the Parisian sunset painted the sky in a palette reminiscent of Beth's favorite flowers, that Lori realized the depth of his feelings for Amy. The realization hit him with the force of a thunderbolt, leaving him breathless. He turned to her, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, and took her hands in his. "Amy," he began, his voice thick with emotion. The words seemed to catch in his throat, and he swallowed hard before continuing. "I know this might seem sudden, but life is too short to waste a moment. "Will you marry me?" Amy's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and joy dancing across her features. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, she stood silent, her lips parted in shock. Then slowly, a smile bloomed on her face, as radiant as the sun breaking through storm clouds. "Yes, Lori," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes." Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, a celebration of love amidst the lingering sorrow. As they exchanged vows, both felt Beth's presence, a gentle warmth enveloping them like a blessing. The church bells rang out, their joyous peals mingling with the bittersweet ache in their hearts. Upon their return home, the March family reunited, their joy at Amy and Lori's union tempered by the ache of Beth's absence. Jo found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, her happiness for the newlyweds at odds with the hollow feeling in her chest where Beth once resided. As they gathered in the parlor, sharing stories and laughter, Jo looked around at her family. Meg radiant in her role as wife and mother, her eyes soft with contentment. Amy glowing with newlywed bliss, her hand clasped tightly in Lori's. Lori himself, his eyes never straying far from his bride, a look of wonder on his face as if he couldn't quite believe his good fortune. Marmee and father, their love a steady anchor through all of life's storms, sat close together, drawing strength from each other's presence. And Beth present in every shared glance, every gentle touch, every moment of silence. Jo could almost hear her sister's gentle laugh, could almost see her sitting at the piano, her fingers dancing over the keys. In that instant, Jo understood. This was Beth's final gift to them. The reminder that love, in all its forms, was the thread that would always bind them together, even in the face of loss and change. With a deep breath, Jo let the warmth of that realization wash over her, ready to face whatever the future might bring, with her family by her side. As the evening drew to a close, Jo felt a sudden urge to step outside. She excused herself and made her way to the front door, her mind swirling with memories and emotions. As she reached for the doorknob, a chill ran down her spine. Something felt different, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. With trembling fingers, she turned the handle, unaware that on the other side a visitor was about to change everything. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the March family's modest home as Jo pushed open the creaky front gate. The familiar scent of lilacs wafted through the air, a bittersweet reminder of happier times. She paused at the threshold, taking a deep breath to steady herself before stepping inside. Little did Jo know that fate had woven a tapestry of surprises, the first thread of which was about to unravel. A letter, crisp and official, lay waiting on the hall table. With trembling fingers, Jo broke the seal and began to read. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Aunt March, in her final act of generosity, had left Jo the sprawling Plumfield estate. The following day, Jo found herself standing before the imposing gates of Plumfield. The iron bars creaked open, revealing a world of possibility. As she wandered through the grand halls, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness, memories of Beth's gentle nature and love for children flooded her mind. The musty air seemed to whisper long-forgotten stories, and the faded wallpaper held the ghosts of laughter past. Suddenly, as if struck by lightning, an idea took root in Jo's fertile imagination. The empty rooms once filled with the opulence of Aunt March's life could be transformed into something meaningful. With a determined glint in her eye, Jo decided to breathe new life into Plumfield by creating a school for boys, a place where young minds could flourish and grow. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Jo threw herself into the project with characteristic enthusiasm, her quill flying across pages as she drafted plans and curricula. The musty rooms of Plumfield came alive with fresh paint and the sound of hammering. Each nail driven into the walls seemed to mend a small piece of Jo's grieving heart, filling the void left by recent losses with purpose and hope. One rainy afternoon, as Jo stood on the porch surveying her handiwork, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and fresh paint, a familiar figure appeared at the gate. Professor Bear, his coat collar turned up against the drizzle, made his way up the path. Jo's heart skipped a beat, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. The world around them seemed to fade away, the pitter patter of raindrops creating a cocoon of intimacy. Their eyes met, and in that moment, time stood still. Words tumbled out, clumsy at first, then gaining momentum like a stream after a spring thaw. They spoke of their shared dreams, their fears, and the deep affection that had grown between them. As the rain intensified, so did their emotions, until finally, standing there drenched to the skin, they declared their love for each other. With joyful tears mingling with the raindrops on her cheeks, Jo accepted Professor Pear's proposal. The rain seemed to wash away the last vestiges of her grief, leaving behind a clean slate, ready to be filled with new hopes and dreams. Together, they would build not just a school, but a home filled with love and learning. The months that followed were a blur of wedding preparations and school arrangements. Jo and her professor, as she affectionately called him, worked side by side, their complementary strengths creating a warm and stimulating environment for their students. The halls of Plumfield, once silent and imposing, now echoed with laughter and the excited chatter of young boys discovering the wonders of knowledge. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Laurie and Amy were concluding their European adventure. They returned home, settling into a charming house near the March family. Amy, her artistic spirit nurtured by the masterpieces of Europe, set up a sunlit studio where she continued to pursue her passion for painting. The room was alive with color, the scent of oils and turpentine, a constant reminder of her creative journey. Laurie, transformed by love and responsibility, threw himself into his work at his grandfather's company with newfound purpose. His days were filled with the hustle and bustle of business, but his evenings were reserved for Amy, their home a haven of creativity and ambition. Not far away, Meg and John faced the daily challenges of raising their lively twins, Daisy and Demi. Their modest home was a whirlwind of activity, filled with the patter of little feet and the constant chatter of curious minds. Money was often tight, but their home was rich with love and laughter. Meg discovered hidden strengths as she managed their household, while John's quiet dedication to his family never wavered. As the seasons changed, Jo received news that set her heart racing. Her novel was to be published. The day the first copy arrived at Plumfield was one of celebration. Jo held the book in her hands, its weight a testament to her perseverance and growth as a writer. The positive reviews that followed were like the first warm breezes of spring, promising new beginnings and endless possibilities. Through it all, the bond between the March sisters remained unbreakable. They gathered often, sharing in each other's joys and offering comfort in times of trouble. Their conversations, once filled with girlish dreams, now revolved around children, careers, and the everyday miracles of adult life. Yet in those moments together, they were once again the little women who had faced the world side by side, their love for each other a constant in a world of change. As Jo looked around at her family, her sisters, their husbands, the children, and her beloved professor, she felt a sense of completeness. The March sisters, now grown women with families and careers of their own, had navigated the twists and turns of life's journey. Together they stood strong, ready to face whatever adventures lay ahead. Their sisterhood a beacon of love and support in the ever-changing landscape of adulthood. The sun was setting on another day at Plumfield, casting a golden glow over the bustling estate. Jo stood at the window of her study, a contented smile playing on her lips as she watched the last of her students head home for the day. Her hand absently stroked the slight swell of her belly, a secret joy she had yet to share with anyone but her husband. As she turned to leave the room, her eyes fell on a letter lying on her desk. The handwriting was familiar, and her heart quickened as she recognized Marmee's script. She picked it up, her fingers tracing the words as she read. Suddenly, her eyes widened, and the letter fluttered to the floor. Jo's mind raced with the implications of what she had just read. How would this news change everything? And how would she tell the others? The extended March family gathered at Plumfield to celebrate Marmee's 60th birthday. The once quiet estate now buzzed with life, filled with the laughter of children from Jo's school and the family's own offspring. Golden sunlight poured through the windows of the grand old house, painting the bustling scene within. The air hummed with excitement, carrying the sweet aroma of freshly baked treats and the cheerful chatter of young voices. At the heart of it all stood Marmee, her silver hair catching the light like a halo, her eyes sparkling with joy as she watched her beloved family come together. Joe, her once wild hair now tamed into a loose bun, darted after her two boys, Rob and Teddy. The little rascals weaved between the legs of adults, their giggles echoing off the walls like playful spirits. Professor Pear watched from across the room, his gentle eyes crinkling with amusement as he observed his wife and son's antics. "Rob, Teddy, come give your grandmother a hug," Joe called out, her voice a blend of exasperation and unconditional love. The boys skidded to a halt, their cheeks flushed with excitement as they rushed to embrace Marmee. Nearby, Amy stood proudly beside her daughter, Bess. The young girl, barely 6 years old, was already showing signs of her mother's artistic talent. Her small hands moved with surprising grace across a sketch pad, capturing the lively scene before her with remarkable accuracy. "Look, Mama," Bess exclaimed, holding up her drawing with pride. "I've drawn Aunt Jo chasing the boys." Amy's heart swelled with love and pride. "It's beautiful, darling," she said softly, running a hand through her daughter's golden curls. Laurie appeared behind them, wrapping an arm around his wife's waist and peering at the sketch with a grin that mirrored his daughter's. In a cozy corner, Meg sat in a well-worn armchair, her twins, Daisy and Demi, perched on either arm. She read to them from a beloved storybook, her voice soft and melodious. The children hung on her every word, their eyes wide with wonder, transported to far-off lands and magical adventures. As the day wore on, the sisters found themselves drawn to a quiet corner of the garden. The laughter of children playing tag drifted to them on the warm breeze, a joyful soundtrack to their moment of reflection. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts, the weight of years and shared experiences settling around them like a familiar blanket. "Do you remember when we used to play here?" Meg asked, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "It seems like only yesterday we were the ones running wild, without a care in the world." Joe chuckled, plucking a dandelion from the grass and twirling it between her fingers. "And now look at us, all grown up with children of our own. Who would have thought?" A shadow passed over their faces as they thought of Beth, their beloved sister who was no longer with them. The ache of her absence, though dulled by time, still lingered in their hearts. Amy reached out and squeezed Joe's hand, her touch conveying more than words ever could. "She's here with us, you know," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "In every kind word, every gentle touch, she lives on through us, through the love we share." The sisters nodded, feeling Beth's presence in the love that surrounded them. They shared stories of their childhood, laughing at old jokes and reminiscing about the mischief they used to get into. Their laughter rang out across the garden, a testament to the enduring bond they shared. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lawn and painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, the family gathered once more in the parlor. Mr. March, his face lined with age but his eyes still bright with wisdom, stood to address the group. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the patriarch of the family. "My dear family," he began, his voice wavering slightly with emotion. "As I look around this room, I am filled with an overwhelming sense of pride and gratitude. Each of you has grown into remarkable individuals, and together, you have created a legacy of love and kindness that will endure for generations." Marmee, seated beside him, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, overcome with emotion. The room fell silent, each person reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment, the trials and triumphs that had shaped them into who they were today. Jo spoke up, her voice filled with determination and passion. "We must continue to nurture this love, to pass it on to our children and our students. The school here at Plumfield is more than just a place of learning. It's a place where we can shape the future, one child at a time." The others nodded in agreement, their minds already racing with plans and ideas for the future. As the celebration began to wind down, the sisters found themselves once again huddled together, drawn to each other like moths to a flame. "No matter what life throws our way," Meg said, her voice firm and resolute, "we'll face it together, just as we always have." Amy and Joe murmured their agreement, their hands clasped tightly together. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, the March family basked in the warmth of their love for one another. The day ended with a sense of contentment and gratitude for the love that had sustained them through both joyous and difficult times. As darkness fell, the house grew quiet, the excited chatter of children replaced by the soft murmur of adult voices. Joe stood by the window, looking out at the stars that were beginning to appear in the velvet sky. She felt a deep sense of peace wash over her, a certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, the love of her family would see them through. With a smile, she turned back to the room, to the faces of those she held dear. The March family had weathered many storms, but their bond had only grown stronger. As they said their good nights and prepared to leave, each carried with them the warmth of this day, a beacon of love to light their way through whatever the future might hold. And so, as the doors of Plumfield closed on this chapter of their lives, they opened to a future filled with promise, hope, and above all, the enduring power of family love.
This book was generated using Speakter's AI voices. You can create human-like voiceovers in over 50 languages.